Party people, party people, party people. Welcome to, it's so nice I had to say it thrice. Welcome to another edition of For the Players. My name is K-Murdock. I'm joined by my host with the most, Harvey Newman, head of Proxima Studios, where we are representing. And fresh off of not fresh off, but it's been a while since we've talked. And, I've obviously internally within the company, we've, talked about, I guess, the post-mortem or the rundown of what happened at Gamescom. But is there anything you wanted to share with the listening audience about your experience out there? This was your second time going, right?
With Proxima, yes, absolutely.
On behalf of Proxima,
absolutely, So it was the second time, and I do think it's good to take a beat to kind of give people updates about what has happened,
right? But, or just even explain, some people what is? There might be people listening who might not know what Gamescom is and how it's relevant to this industry.
True. So Gamescom is basically a show. It's the biggest. Is the biggest game show in the world, and what I mean show is basically an expo of games, playable games. Also, if you're into racing, if you're into anything game wise, mobile, whatever, you can find it in Gamescom. But the best thing about Gamescom is that it's a gathering of not only players or publishers, but also basically indie developers, anybody that kind of wants to make games, anybody that wants to kind of breathe games. Cosplayers, for example, is another thing that happens a lot there. So there's a lot of gear and merch from all over the world. They come over from all over to actually sell merch in Gamescom. So basically, you feel when you go to Gamescom this is a safe space for anybody that is a nerd, that feels good about being a nerd, that feels proud about playing games and nerding out about stuff. This is your people's. That's basically what happens. This is great. So for us at Proxima, we went over there we went over there to talk with publishers, talk with partners that want to help us with our game, people that actually are interested in maybe funding our game. And it's been successful, man. It was I mentioned to the team internally already, but it's actually quite interesting what just one trailer can do for your game, right?
Visibility wise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because we dropped just the one teaser trailer last year in December, and the amount of attention and visibility and all that stuff that we got, I completely forgot about it. Only when I got to Gamescom is when people were like, "Oh, Proxima, right? So Warship Jolly Roger, I saw it. It's really, really cool." And even publishers and people that we haven't talked to, partners, are the game looks amazing. We want to we'll help you guys out. So it was really refreshing to see. So I came back with lots of energy to tell the team that, we are on to something. It feels that way. And it feels like most people feel like we're on to something. Right. And that's a good feeling.
Nice. And, just for perspective, I've only been to GDC, the Game Developers Conference, which happens here in North America in San Francisco. Gamescom is in Germany, right?
That's right. Gamescom is in Germany. Yeah, Cologne.
And you said it's the biggest game expo now in the world, not only in Europe, but in the world. So how the size of it obviously trumps or makes GDC look small. Based on what you're saying.
100%. I think GDC must be...
In GDC, for perspective, I thought it was pretty. I've only been, the only other one I've been to, rest in peace, was E3 in its height, in the early aughts and stuff.
I never been. I wanted to
go. Okay.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so GDC must be, I don't know, tens of thousands of people. It must be in those metrics. I don't know exactly the number.
Okay.
But Gamescom, this year, I think it was close to 400,000.
What?
It's 380,000.
And there's enough space to fit everyone. It didn't feel oh my God, a swarm.
It does feel like a swarm, though. It does feel like a swarm. But I do think they need to expand things because basically, I feel like it's probably one of the few places in the world that it could happen. I'm guessing there must be a place in America like that as well. But in Gamescom specifically, it's they have massive pavilions like, but they have about 10 of them, right?
Gotcha.
But they are absolutely like, it's going to like a hangar of a like
And they have
multiple
10 of those.
and there's 10 of those, and it's filled with people and filled with booths and filled
Wow.
with all kinds of stuff, and even though that's 10, they can expand up to 12, I think.
Okay.
And I believe because it brings so much to the city of Cologne, everybody in Cologne knows about Gamescom.
Okay.
They are thinking about building new ones because of Gamescom, right?
Wow.
So it's just getting bigger. That's the easier way of saying it.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the GDC is about developers, it's about talks and about knowledge, it's about sharing,
Right.
all of this stuff, but within games development. But Gamescom is for the players.
Right.
That's basically the big difference.
Right.
And because it's for the players, you can feel that people go there to kind of like play the games, test the games, see the games for the first time, queue up for their favorite game.
Right.
It's a nice vibe, man. It's
Right.
like, it's so addictive.
I'm sure you got a lot of exercise too, because you said it was huge. So you were walking.
So much, man. Your legs are like your brain, your legs, your body is just gone by the end. So I only did it for 3 days. It was very much Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Some people go for the whole week, and they have way more meetings than we do. I don't know how they do it. It's crazy.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, well, I mean, based on when you were given, you would report daily and record videos. Shout out to your wife who was recording.
Yeah, absolutely, Camille was recording.
You look spent in all the videos, I must say. And you did say you were like, man, my brain I can't even keep track of what's going on. But now I get it. Okay.
Yeah, like it's very much what we went through because Kyle and I went to GDC this year with Johnny as well, which is our composer, and we just did a couple of meetings. Yeah, it's like that, but like many meetings during the day, and you have to run, and you have to keep fresh, and you have to talk so much. But yeah, hopefully it's going to be worth it. You never know about these things. You never know if they are worth it or not. You just do it, hope your best, showcase the best you can do. But we have a couple of publishers at the very least that are super interested and are looking to hear more from us.
Well, stay tuned, y'all. I mean, we'll talk about that when it's something worth talking about or sharing, right?
100%.
But in the meantime, speaking of Gamescom, I just did the math in my head about what we're going to talk about. And I realized that what we're about to talk about, this game or this IP that is sadly about to get shuttered after 2 weeks. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, it launched around Gamescom.
Yeah.
And that's Concord. I'm talking about Concord, the elephant in the room. So
Concord, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it launched, I want to say it was like Gamescom finished on the 23rd, and I think Concord launched
that day.
On that day, or maybe 26th? Was it 23rd or 26th?
I think it might have been the 23rd. Yeah, because they were saying 23rd? It's only been 2 weeks, and 2 weeks from 2 weeks from when it launched to when it's about to go off the servers. So
that's it. Oh yeah, because it's tomorrow, right?
Right.
So like it's like first and foremost, we need to start with this. Shout out to all the developers.
Yes.
Is it Firewalk?
The studio that developed the game.
Right. I believe it's Firewalk, right?
Right.
I don't want to like make a mistake.
No. Let me see.
Firewalk Studios, I believe. Yeah, Firewalk. Yeah.
Yep.
So shout out to everybody at Firewalk because, like, we talked about this many times here in the podcast, where like no matter if the game is good or bad, or if you're successful or not successful, everybody puts their heart into this in order to make it successful.
Of course.
And I have to give a shout out to start positively because the game looks incredibly polished. The first person shooting on that game, like sings, and it's so cool, and it's fluid, and it's hard.
Right.
Me having worked in a few first person games is so hard. So shout out to them. They did an amazing job with that game. But yeah, man, unfortunately it didn't really work out for them. And I think, from my perspective, I feel is the sign of times and things to come. Right. And I always go on about things need to be worse before they go better. They get better in the games industry. And I think that's like we actually hitting that bottom at this point, I feel.
Sometimes it takes. I mean, like I was looking up, the stats about the game. The game costs $40 million to make, which comparatively, what we're trying to make with Worship Jolly Roger is literally maybe a fourth of that, like a fourth of that.
Not even as less. Yeah, exactly. Like we are developing, we developed quite a bit already. So
it's $40 million, like. I mean, obviously, I always defer to you because you worked on and shipped so many AAA titles. What is a budget of $40 million? Like, that's pretty. Is that pretty standard? Is that a lot? And I only say that because I happened to, before we went online and did doing the show, I said, let me look up. And this is probably not the best because this is such an outlier. But I said, let me look up the budget for Grand Theft Auto 6.
Oh no.
And I mean, and I get it. That's totally like what is the thing they say? This is the it's not the precedent. It's you know it stands out to outlier. But
Yeah.
the budget for GTA 6 is they said approaching because it's obviously I'm sure they're readying because I think it comes out next year, right?
I don't know. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
I don't think that anybody knows yet. It hasn't been announced, but I hope so.
Well, they said the budget is approaching $2 billion.
2 billion?
Yeah, and to the point they said, I guess 2K is thinking about charging 70 for the game, which I mean, let's be honest, people are going to pay for it because
They will pay for it. They will
yeah,
pay
it's
it.
GTA. And every
Yeah.
GTA has been like a success at this
Yeah.
point. So that being said, $40 million, which is a fraction of 2 billion. I mean, that's a significant amount of money, but like, where does that range? Where does that fall in like for a lot of AAA? Because would you consider Concord not only because it was published by Sony, but
Mhm.
this is considered a AAA game, right?
Yes and no. It's
Okay.
actually really interesting because this is part of the equation. This is why it's so cool for us to be talking about this because I don't think it would have been a proper super AAA game if Sony doesn't acquire the studio.
Mhm.
They were not acquired by Sony and they were working on this game. And the game doesn't have a story, first and foremost. They don't have
Okay, so it's strictly like PvP, like online play, like
exactly, yeah. It's just
okay.
like PvP. It doesn't have a PvE mode. It doesn't like normally, to me at least, like normally a AAA game gives you like much more than what the
Yeah.
nucleus of the game is. If you look at Battlefield, Battlefront, all this other like Call of Duty,
Borderlands, all of them, like they have a
Borderlands,
story, yeah,
Outlaw, they have a story, they have a PvE, they have a PvP, they have about different modes, they have
right.
different skins. Like I think they just had multiplayer, different skins, different characters, boom. So I don't know. I think that they were like a bare bones of Overwatch in a way, right? If you think about Overwatch when it came out, like they had all the characters in the silhouette and like
Right.
all that stuff, and like I feel like it was a little bit more. But Sony acquired them, and anything that Sony acquires immediately becomes AAA because everybody's used to the Naughty Dogs, to the Guerrilla
Right.
Games, to all these key studios that Sony has that only produce AAA games every single time. So I think the game was elevated to maybe a level that wasn't, but then they had Sony money, so most likely they actually had to polish even more because now we have infinite money, not infinite, but what I mean, like
Well,
you
I
have deep
mean,
pockets.
yeah.
You have deep pockets, and you can
Right,
basically
right.
just like really make it like shine. So I think the game ended up falling into this place that is like it's AAA, but on the echelons of AAA, I don't think he actually kind of like I don't think he's like top tier AAA. I would say. But it's because the developer is doing the first game for a AAA studio, Sony, right?
Right.
Like the second, this is what I hope that Sony keeps the studio, they keep the people because they did an amazing job. They're super talented.
Right.
Because whatever that team does, especially if it's first person, is going to be amazing. Because if they brought
Right.
that level of polish to this game, it just means that the game was wrong, but it doesn't mean that the team cannot work on another game that actually is
Right.
going to be absolutely fantastic
Right.
that people want to play, right?
Is that explain to me? I feel like we've talked about this before. Usually, when that happens, like when a studio, or in this case, this game that people were looking forward to playing probably into 2025, like making updates and DLC and add-ons and stuff. What happens to the team at this point?
Good question. I don't know. I think nobody knows except for Sony. But they can go one or two routes. I hope they go with the first, which is the positive. Like, once again, the team has a lot of talent, right? If Sony bought them, it's because they saw the talent and they saw like you guys have much more than just one game in you. You guys have multiple games that are going to be successful. This is why they bought Bungie and all that stuff. Normally, if they want to, like if a publisher wants to invest in a game, they invest in that game and then see how it does. And then if a developer makes another game that is super popular, then all of a sudden it's like, hold on, these guys know what's going on.
Right.
But now you have two games. But then when you have the third game and the game is popular, or maybe it's just one giant game like Bungie, like Destiny, right? That every DLC, everything is just amazing and it's better and better and better. Then everybody kind of thinks of you like, these guys know what's going on. So I'm assuming that Sony did that, their due diligence, and then found out that these guys know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So they will want to keep the talent, and they want to maybe like shift them into another game that hopefully uses the same tech, because they have a lot of tech on that game underlying. That tech can be reused in other things. So it's called a tech stack. Basically, the tooling that you use to actually create a game, then is used to then creating other games. So hopefully they'll use that. They use the talent and then create another game. However, times are tough, like financially for everybody. And people are looking to cut things, as we all know now from the games industry, because it's been 2 years of this. And like what my fear is that if super talented studio that Microsoft had when they actually kind of like the guys that created Hi-Fi Rush, they basically canned the whole studio, including the people, just to kind of like save money. What does that mean for the studio, Firewalk? Right? It's a tough one.
Man, it's sucks because, you know, especially these people probably, you know, the company that was making it, like you said, Firewalk, was looking forward to iterating and releasing add-ons and all that kind of stuff. So, so we talked about potentially what could happen to the staff, but let's go back a little bit more with Concord, because one of the things I was interested just reading about, and I'm sure everyone is asking this question, like, how, in your opinion, how did this happen? The thing I'm seeing most before you answer is that people were I think the people who signed up or paid for it were kind of pissed off that they could go to like a game like Valorant or like other like online games that are very similar to this and just sign up. And if anything, just pay for like add-ons and stuff. But I believe the base price of this game was $40. And I didn't realize that's pretty significant, you know, as far as like, why would you pay for something that you can get free somewhere else?
Agree completely. I think there's a bunch of different variables on this situation and different, like, you know, things that went wrong. I think the first one, I think it was marketing. Okay. If you think about it, you didn't really heard much about Concord. Like for example, if an Uncharted comes out or if a God of War comes out, sometimes you hear about it 2 years prior. Right. Like, and they like the year of release, they normally just like start shouting about it from January the year, just like December is coming out, summertime, Game Fest or whatever. They actually kind of like go like, here's the new trailer, and it just becomes a hype machine for the whole year, so you can then drop the game at the best time possible. Right. But Concord had like a couple of trailers, and then they dropped. That's it. Simple. And the whole community was telling them that like the game is not really catching steam, and like it's not really, people are not playing the game. Just hold it a little bit and then create proper marketing and all that stuff, and then re-release it. And I don't think Sony really paid attention, and I think they just released it. And I don't know if it's because Sony thinks they are too big now and people play Sony games on PlayStation because it's Sony and it's a first party studio. I don't know. You know, only Sony can tell, but I don't think it was the best move, because if they really believed in the game, they would have thrown a lot of marketing behind it, and they would have, like, whatever they spend in the game, let's say it's 40 million. Normally companies spend like twice that for marketing only, right?
That's crazy. I mean, but it makes sense. I mean, how especially in this day and age, you know, the good and bad about the internet is that you have access. Everyone has access to stuff, but at the same time, you're fighting for people's attention because there's just to see, like, it's a flood. And this goes for all media, from podcasts to music to video games. So film. So yeah, like I agree. Like, it's the only thing mind you, I'm probably the worst person to ask, is every time you ask me what I'm playing, I feel like I'm like 2 years behind catching up on games. But I have obviously followed, thanks to Summer Games Fest. There was a lot of stuff that like and that's where I saw the premiere of Concord. That's the first time I'd even heard about it. Was like maybe late spring, early summer at Summer Games Fest. But I mean, considering, that's why I was like, oh yeah, this is a Sony property. Like I feel like the lead up to like games like Destiny and Overwatch, I feel like I saw so much more promotional stuff that this didn't have the same. And I don't know. I was like, that's kind of weird. But then again, this is not really a game. I don't play FPSs anymore like that, you know? So I was like, maybe I'm just out of the loop. But man, a few.
It's crazy because sorry to interject.
No, for sure.
Like just to compare, because they released really closely, Black Myth Wukong and Concord. Like I think Black Myth released like two or 3 days before, I think, but everybody in the industry heard about this game. Like I know I heard about this game last year because
I remember seeing the trailer and I was like, this game looks phenomenal.
Like a year ago, right? More than a year ago, and then towards the end, it was like you could not escape it. I saw like gameplay 1, gameplay 2, and gameplay with this enemy, gameplay with that enemy, and look at what else you can do. And people were like positive and negative, and the conversation was real. And it's like, yeah, but is it Elden Ring? But is it like not Elden Ring? And what is it then? and those are the conversations that normally the game community have before a big game comes out, because like there's the naysayers, there's the positive people, the massive fans, and then the game comes out, and then you'll see what happens. But there was no time for that with Concord. There was nothing.
I mean, even when I saw the trailer, like it looked typical trailer, like real colorful enemies, like real cool shots and stuff. And I was like, and then there was some gameplay sprinkled in. I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. Like it just reminded me of Overwatch, to be honest with you. And unfortunately I feel like trying to come out and compete with the Overwatch. I mean, there've been some games I feel like you think about Apex and like Helldivers, but they each had their kind of niche thing that they do differently. Like Helldivers, it reminds me a lot more of like Left 4 Dead. And it's the fact that you're playing with people to try to beat these hordes of enemies, whereas opposed to, battling another team of other players. Like it's kind of nice. And it's hard, So I'm like, I don't know what Concord was like trying to bring in or introduce that was new to this genre, which has now been since Halo, you talking about 20, 25 year legacy of games. And I feel like it's just hard to iterate and do something like fresh and new,
Yeah. No, and I think that's the second thing that happened as well, is that I think that I don't know who took the decision. I don't know exactly what happened, but everybody's talking about how not authentic the game is. And I think that maybe it was to do with like I don't know. I don't think anybody that is actually on a creative industry wants to actually make something that is not authentic by default. Everybody wants to create something unique and all that stuff. But I do think that their inspiration sources were a bit played out at this point. That's my personal opinion, because if you think about it, Marvel had his heyday already, and out of Marvel, maybe one of the ones that were more coolest was the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
And I think that at this point in time, nobody wants to see another Guardians of the Galaxy.
This game had some Guardian of the Galaxy vibes, like for sure. I must say, ironically,
That's it. Overwatch came out 5 years ago, maybe longer. I don't know exactly how long it's been. And the hero shooter, when Overwatch came out, was an amazing thing. Like nobody had seen a hero shooter made that way, and it is fresh and it's unique and stuff. But then they went with the same style, but just like different and colorful and stuff. So that's another thing. And then there's so many hero shooters coming out because of the success of Overwatch, but nobody kind of like can overtake Overwatch. They kind of like go up and down and stuff. But like Overwatch is Overwatch. The one that came closer probably was Valorant, and now Valorant is doing their own thing now. So I think that at this point it's like you actually have IP that is kind of oversaturated. The type of game is oversaturated. The gamers. Normally you have your main game, right? So if it's Overwatch, it's Overwatch. If it's Destiny, it's Destiny, whatever.
Right.
And people's attention span is so little nowadays that you can just focus on your main game. So as soon as you actually get to a online only, everybody's already playing some other game. Like, why should I go to this other one? And I don't think Sony, once again, going back to the marketing, gave enough good reasons for players to play this game. Like, why is it different from anything else that came before? That's normally the first question that everybody like. And Black Myth is different because once it's a Chinese game made by a Chinese developer based on Kung Fu, which we haven't seen in ages.
Some history, right.
History is based on a real book. It has like a unique character. You've never seen a monkey with a stick fighting. you have like Dragon Ball vibes. Turns out
Yeah.
that was the thing that actually inspired Dragon Ball. It's like, oh shit. And then you got like there's so many things going on. And
Right.
Naruto as well. You see the clone monkeys like
Yes. Yes.
that
Yes.
Naruto. That's what inspired Naruto. It's like, oh snap. So all of a sudden you really want to play it because you can see all these things, but in a positive way because it's unique.
Right.
So I think that's what they didn't have, fortunately.
Right. It's so just I feel like we come to this refrain so much in talking about these games, but yeah, like the fact that games get made is pretty it's a magical thing. It's kind of, it's a technical thing mixed with creativity. The fact that a game can come out and see light is still a bit of a miracle, which is awesome. And I'll say one thing, I mean, it's almost like daunting if you're starting out because you're stuck in this like, do I make something that people are familiar with? Like, and I think about like from both the developer and the publisher side, because as the developer, it's like, well, I want to create a game. I have an idea, and naturally, you're gonna be influenced by the things you play, right? So it's like, yo, I want to make my own first person shooter. I want to make my own Metroidvania, or whatever. And that's cool because it's familiarity there. But then it's also like, what can I do to make this, whatever, my version of it stand out? And then from the publisher side, I think about like, okay, we have to have a first person shooter in our portfolio. We have to have a platformer in our portfolio. And like, that's also like, in this case, like taking a swing and a miss, a big miss for Sony, because it's like, their $40 is gone. I mean, $40 million is gone now. They're literally 2 weeks into this game. They're like admitting that this was a fail and completely canning this game. How that aspect of it, do you feel, I guess, do you feel like, okay, like let's just cut our losses. We can, based on the projections, this is not going to do, because I believe they only had 700 max unique concurrent players at once, which is nothing. Like there's probably games, Halo 2 probably still has that many people, if not more. You know what I mean? Like, and that game came out 20 years ago.
Yeah, there's indie games that have more than that as well.
Right. So it's tough, man. Like, I don't know. Like, what do you think about? Do you think they were too presumptive or preemptive rather about shutting this down, or do you think like, hey, they saw the market forecast, this was not going to do much better, let's go ahead and cut our losses and just like move on to the next?
So I think there was definitely that. I think it was like, let's cut our losses and just move on to the next. Okay. Absolutely that. And I think that they kind of realized that at the rate they were going, I think like before they closed it, there was about 90 people or 60 people playing the game. Eventually they will get to a point that you cannot find players in servers.
That's crazy.
Servers are so expensive to maintain. Right. And normally you have a lease of a year for servers, especially for a big company like that.
Right.
So you need to renew that lease and hire more servers and things like that. So Sony 100% went very much like, let's just like save money, because when you start with a game, let's say it's 40 million, it might be more, I don't know, but let's say it's 40 million that invested in the game. They're trying to recoup their losses as soon as the game drops. Right. And I think this is why they actually charge $40 or I think it's $40, right? For the game. So in order to get those losses back and also start to kind of pay for the servers, pay for people's salaries, things like that, right? But I think from what I've seen from the developers' updates, they also wanted to go against the idea that you have to pay for cosmetics. I think the $40 would include other things that normally other free games actually have make you pay, but they actually included in the price. But yeah, I think regardless, I think Sony wanted to cut off their losses. I do think it's a massive L for Sony.
Yeah, for sure.
and I think, like, this is what I think that becomes the positives of this. There is the old way of doing things, right? Like you work in a game 100%. As soon as they saw the pitch of the game, they saw the IP, they saw the polish, they saw the stuff. I'm like, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy sells, Overwatch sells, Hero Shooter sell. Like this looks really polished. I mean, what's not to like about this game, right? So 100% in a corporate fashion, they were like, this will sell because everything else is telling me that it sells. But the market is changing so quickly that turns out that the players don't want that anymore because this has been played out,
Right.
been around
Right.
for too long, and everybody has their their truth radar on very much, the shit radar on really on right now, where everybody's talking about originality. Like, where is the originality like gone from the games industry? What happened with creating original IP? What happened with creating original stuff? And I think this game just came out at the right time or wrong time for people to use it as an example of what not to do in the industry.
Mm,
Because, and I don't blame Sony, I don't blame the players, I don't blame the developers, but I do think that Sony, especially because they are more traditional, because they are based in Japan, normally the way they actually kind of deal with games development is more on a traditional level, just like
mm,
Nintendo. I'm pretty sure they were kind of like going about their business in a traditional fashion, and they saw potential. They bought the studio, they got the
right.
game. Like, cool, here's going to be another jewel in our belt of
Hmm.
games. Some fresh IP. We're not going to like release another Killzone. Let's release let's release this stuff. They should have, but
Forgot about that. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
but let's release this stuff that is new and fresh, and people will like it. At least it's something new. But it didn't work out that way, unfortunately.
Right.
So I do think that a massive corporation like that, Sony, Microsoft, and all that stuff, they unfortunately, I feel like they need this kind of L's to kind of like really go back and think. Because if it was a
Right.
small L, okay, cool, didn't sell well, probably the market, da, da, da.
Right.
But because it's such a big one,
And it's
100%
Sony.
and it's
Right.
Sony, they
Right.
need to really go back to the board and go like, wait, I think we need to start rethinking our plan. Because what I saw the other day is that, which I completely forgot, is that they have another two titles down the pipe that are exactly the same vibe as.
Oh my God, man.
So they opened a studio in Canada, led by Jade Raymond, the lady that actually kind of like was the game director for Assassin's Creed
Okay.
in Ubisoft. So she actually hired a bunch of people, really talented people. I have a bunch of friends working there as well, and that's supposed to be an online only exclusive game. So that's one, and then it looks very similar to Concord. And second, Bungie announced this other IP they're going to work on that was like white and colorful and
Hmm.
unique,
Hmm.
and that also starting to look so as well like a hero shooter.
Oh boy.
So what's gonna happen with those, right? So yeah, it's big. It's a big thing.
Oh man. Yeah. It's almost like, yeah, I mean, what is it? Imitation is the highest form of flattery, is
Flattery.
usually what they say.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I guess like you said, the good thing is now the players are once again starting to dictate. And I mean, they made it known loud and proud on this one that, they don't want this. They
yeah,
want some fresher, more original stuff. So maybe, and you've been, credit you, because you've been saying this for weeks, like us doing the show. You're always, and not probably just because we
yeah.
actually are operating as like an indie trying to get the double A status, I guess. But you're saying that's where the innovation lies, just like investing in these kind of games and these kind of studios is going to bring more originality and creativity to pass. And maybe that's what makes the bigger publishers like the Sonys and the Microsofts, whatever, pay more attention.
Agree,
Now. So
agree. And something else to mention here as well is like the single player versus the multiplayer conversation, right?
mhm.
Which we've been talking. I mean, I've been talking about it for years, but we've been talking in this podcast from the very beginning.
Right.
And it's kind of weird, like to me in my mind it never kind of like fit, because if there's one constant in the whole industry that is true since the beginning of time, or beginning of the time of this industry, is that single player game sell. Like, they always have and they
Right.
always will. But there is this thing, this new thing, relatively new, that is about 10 15 years old or so, that people go like, multiplayer everything, multiplayer is the future, single players are dead, single player are
Right.
dead, therefore forget about single player, let's do multiplayer everything. And I understand that it's all about the money. I understand it's all about like making more money because you can get more players if they actually start playing your game in a big number, like Call of Duty and stuff. However, like, single player though, like,
Right.
there's something
Right.
to be said about investing in consistency, because that's basically has been there from the very beginning. And with what happened last year with Larian Studios and Baldur's Gate, with what happened with now Black Myth as well. Once again, same thing. Right. My game of the year before, I think it was Hades, and again single player game. I think like this kind of feeling of like people are fed up with this multiplayer everything. I'm not saying it's going to go away. I don't think it's like can have one or the other. It's just both can coexist. It's just that I think people want a better balance, right? Like stop kind of like forcing me into actually multiplayer everything and just allow developers to develop like a God of War, a Spider-Man, like a Black Myth, and just like invest in those developers instead of just multiplayer everything, you know?
I was totally, I'm with you. I think also too, because of my age and just like where I am right now in life, like I told you the last time I'd even played like competitively or with my friends online was the night my daughter was born. 10 years ago at this point was when I was playing Destiny 1. And since then, like, because I don't have as much time to do nightly and weekly raids with my friends or like hook up and do this kind of stuff, it's gotten better as my children get older. But I realize like I'm more invested in playing on my own when I can. And usually that leads me to want to play single player games. So games like Ghost of Tsushima, even though that had a multiplayer too. And, you know, I get it. Like some games, it's just weird when they try to force it in there. Like I know Last of Us had like a mode they were trying to do multiplayer and that got killed, at no pun intended, but that got shut down because but I'm also like, I don't think everything needs a multiplayer. Like, I get it. They want to, you know, naturally appease and try to make the game have as many people come to the party as possible. And some people really thrive off single player campaigns and some people do want that element. But I feel like not every game needs that necessarily. And it's weird when it seems very forced that to be honest with you, I mentioned a couple times on this show, I love Fallout. So, but the only one I never played was Fallout, what was it, 69 or not 69, what, 76. Yeah. I knew I had a 6 in it. So 76, I didn't play it at first. I went back and played it once they actually put a real single player experience in there. But like, it just wasn't for me. And I feel like they lost a big swath of their the people that normally love that game deciding to make it like no and focus it more on multiplayer, to be honest with you, and I know I wasn't the only one who because there was a lot of like pushback and just negative vibes put out there and feedback about the game. So anyway,
absolutely. Absolutely. I remember the Fallout on 76 because there's also lots of bugs and felt unfinished. But but the biggest thing was 100% was like, how can you not give me a single player campaign when
in Fallout, dude, you've done it. And like, I get it. They wanted to change it up. And I don't know. I didn't appreciate it. And it's cool to see that later they did go back and make like a DLC that was like a solo campaign where they put real NPCs and stuff, as opposed to, I think originally when it came out, it was a collection of what they call like holotapes and stuff that kind of talked about a backstory about this area in West Virginia you were in. But it just wasn't the same because Fallout is known for the motley crew of cool NPCs and stuff. I mean, you see it reflected even in the TV show because the universe of characters they make, and to not have that was just, I couldn't play it. So
absolutely. And I think that basically we get into, it might be me, but I don't think so. A lot of people feel this way from what I hear, especially young people, but there's so much information out there. There's so many streamers, there's esports, there's like online and all that stuff. And I do think that people are reverting back to this idea of like, I want to play this game, sit down. I heard a really known streamer actually say, I didn't want to stream Black Myth. I just wanted to play myself and just enjoy the game myself.
Right.
And I think this feeling that of like, just like what happened to just you sitting down on your living room, bedroom, whatever, and playing a game and just enjoying the ride.
And having a personal experience. You don't have to broadcast it out on...
Yeah. Speak about it with your mates after work or whatever it is. But just spend time, enjoy it, be amazed by it. It's like, cannot wait to actually go and tell somebody about this. But that's it. It's like a one-on-one kind of situation with you in the game. And I think people are kind of like wanting that again. I think they kind of lost that for quite a while, and they kind of like saw a lot of people playing games, and but I think that now we get into a point now that is like, just give me a solid game that it is not bugged, that is like good on day one, that I can play, that I can finish on day one, that I can feel good about it.
Right.
And as long as I have that and it's a solid game, then I can invest my money and then, spend my time wisely.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, in wrapping up talking about Concord in this episode, what do you think is the biggest takeaway? Like, I know we've talked about like what, we think will happen now for like the team that made it and where they went wrong and stuff. But what do you think is the biggest learning lesson from like the release of the release and subsequent very quick shutdown of Concord and, the game in in the 2 weeks that it's been out?
Yeah. So, I'm going to put my guru hat and try to envision the future, even though I can't. But like, I think that like, even though it's bad, and once again, anybody on Sony at Sony that might hear that, they probably won't hear this. But if they are, I think it couldn't happen. Like this bad stuff couldn't happen to a better company, because if that's one thing that is sure, or two things, is that in the Eastern market, they are very big into their single player games, right? And Sony's DNA, the base of everything of Sony is very much like Nintendo, is their single player game, right? And I think what has happened maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, because I think Concord has been in development for like 6 or 8 years or something like that. So, which is a long time. So the market has changed so much, so fast, right? That I think 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whenever that happened, maybe 5 years ago, they probably went, look, you know what? We've been single player for so long. We're known as a single player company because of all the studios that we have. Let's diverge and go multiplayer, because I think that's where the money is. And this is why acquiring studios and stuff. Also because Microsoft was really aggressive. But I think that now that Sony is seeing what Black Myth is doing and other games are doing and all that stuff, I do think they probably going to go back to their roots and then focus on the single player games again and focus on those units. Like, there's nothing better. I don't know if I watch you, Kyle, but nothing better than buying a bundle of a PlayStation and a game, and you know that game is going to be bomb.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like
$40 or $50 from buying the game, because I know, and you can just put the console on, connect the console, and then play that game, and that's just you sorted for the next month, right?
Yeah. Great. I agree. And like you were saying, it's something about, obviously this dates like from where we're from, but like playing a game kind of by yourself. And then when you meet up again with your friends who are also playing it siloed amongst themselves, like talking about shared experience. Oh, did you find that? Or how about this moment and that? Like now I feel like, unfortunately, everything is, on Twitch. And like, even my wife still is baffled about the fact that people literally just can watch other people play. She's like, why not just play the game yourself? You're literally spending the time that you could be watching someone. I was like, well, sometimes they play because they like the person's personality. Yeah. Sometimes it's just people feel maybe too isolated and alone, and they want to feel like, it's kind of a shared thing. So it's a way of connection or whatever. But I agree. Sometimes I'm like, man, the time I could be spending watching you play, let me just pop it in my system or boot up my PlayStation and play myself.
Exactly. And like, I don't bash anybody that like watches live stream.
Right. For sure. Absolutely. To each his own.
Yeah. Because I'm fascinated by watching certain things. I love Shroud, for example. Shroud is my dude. He's really, really cool. And like, he keeps it real. Right. However, I think part of what you just mentioned now about people not playing games and just watching people playing games. Games is such an interactive medium that you have to have a controller in your hands to feel how it is to have fun, to have the smiles and the sadness and the scares and stuff, that people are having opinions about games that they haven't played a lot. Right. Which I think isn't fair on the games, because the other day, like just yesterday, I was watching this streamer that actually was happy with Concord, and he was not liking the fact that the studio was going to shut this down.
Right.
To him, and no bashing him, that was the best first-person game that he ever played. Was his dream come true. Best game, better than Overwatch. Absolutely amazing. He was going to like be his main game and all these other things. And he did say that anybody that is bashing this game, most people haven't played it yet.
That is very true. It's just word of mouth, Yeah.
And given the player count, I'm not surprised, because the amount of negativity that came from Discord comparison with the concurrent players or the players that played it, is not the same.
Right.
So obviously, a lot of these people that are actually saying these things about Concord haven't really played it. They just saw a video or playthrough or a streamer talking some stuff about the game, and then they got to their own conclusion. So they were like, "Let's talk about Concord."
Right.
But how can you talk about a game as such an interactive experience when you haven't really experienced? It's like going to a roller coaster, seeing people going around on a roller coaster, and then reviewing the roller coaster. It's
Right.
like,
He was like, no, you need to ride it yourself. You need to experience.
yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what feels unfair to me as a developer specifically.
Right. Oh man, I love the fact that you said that, because I feel like so many people are living life second, not first person or first, they're living it through other people's talking about it like, oh yeah, I agree. But I'm like, well, you might have a different opinion if you really just played it. Like it's okay to not go with the masses and to play it yourself,
Absolutely, yeah. And nobody wants to be contradictory at this point.
Yes.
Everybody wants to agree with each other. It's like, yeah, Concord is shit. Yeah, Concord is shit. And like, what happened to I actually give props to this one dude, and like, major props to you. You have a different opinion from the rest, right? You don't think the game is bad, and major props. And because the game looks polished, the game looks good. I mean, it cannot be all bad,
right?
But like, we are in this, like, everything's black and white nowadays,
right? Very much
like,
so.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing I'll say about this is, I guess, like, just trying to look at it as a glass half full kind of thing. Like, to be honest with you, it is occasionally, I guess, like, I don't want to say nice, because it's never nice to see something or someone fail, because someone put a lot of work into it. Yep. But I will say, seeing like someone, a company the level of Sony, which you think is like infallible, they'll never have a mess up, whatever, especially considering Sony has really been just dominating since the PlayStation 1 came out, 20 years ago, just about. So it is occasionally just to see like a human thing happen where someone has a failure is nice, and it just gives perspective that no one is above this happening to them, from the small indie company to a major AAA juggernaut like Sony and Microsoft, whatever. So it just kind of is like, okay, if it happened to them and they're able to, and they'll be fine in the long run.
Yeah, I think so.
It just kind of gives perspective and lets people know, like, it happens to everybody, and the idea now, I guess, like, listen to the players. Try something fresh. Keep 100%. Maybe invest in some other like IPs that are a little bit more unique. I mean, but it happens. So
and something else to say, like, you have absolutely spot on, man. Like, I think another thing to say here as well is that, like, I think the market is shifting, and it's shifting to the developer and not the publisher. And I think it's the same thing as it used to happen back in the day to cinema, to film back in the day, because it used to be all about Lionsgate and MGM and all these things.
20th Century Fox, the big ones. Yeah.
If it's this brand, then I'll love it or whatever, right?
Yeah, of course.
But how long have you ever thought, like, when was the last time that you thought about, like, oh, it was an MGM movie? Like, you don't think about that. You think about the people behind the movie and who directed it and who's the main actors and who's the cinematographer and things like that.
Yep.
And you don't care whoever, like, funded it. Like, whoever funded it, as long as it's good, cool. It can be Netflix. It doesn't matter. But I think we're getting to that point in the industry now, where like cool you Sony, cool you Microsoft, cool you Ubisoft or whatever. But let's hear from the developers. Like, what do they think about the game? What are they doing about the game? What is the difference between this game and the other games and things like that? And I think that's really, really good, because I think it's about time that we get to the point that, like, we don't have this distinction, because we need to hear from the developers, and it gives a lot of power to the developers. And you have to be careful what you want with it, what you do with the power. So far, developers have been very manicured by the publishers. Mm-hmm. Which is another problem, because a lot of the times when you actually speak, and I've been in that situation before, whenever you have to speak with the media, whenever you have to speak the thing, before then there's a big list of things, like, of yays and no's that you can do. Like, make sure you talk about this, make sure you talk about this. If they ask you this, do this. And it's very manicured, and then every single interview sounds exactly the same as the other interview. Like, so, but what about the game? How is it? Is it good? Well, we like to say that is good enough. And it's just like, are you passionate or not, right? like it feels disjointed. And I have to give a shout out to this studio that I saw, like, this awesome, like, dev diary or dev update, I should say, called Fun Dog Studios, and they're working on this game called Forever Winter. and definitely check it out for
Okay.
Everwinter. And I think they called the video Ultimatum or something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
And it was the biggest moment to me, at least as a dev, of seeing another dev just going, you know what? We are in a new era. We are entering a new era right now, and this is going to be the future. Because basically, what he was doing, he was addressing the players of his game,
Right.
he was basically saying, "Look, we're not doing this for the publishers. We're not doing this for anybody. We're doing it for you. Thanks
Right.
for your help. We don't believe in charging more than $50 for any game, so we will charge $25 for our game. We will
Wow.
listen to you. We will actually share updates with you, and we will build this game together. So all the feedback that you give us is cool. Thank you so much for your support." Things like that. And it's like very much like, with words like shit and fuck off and like, we don't believe in that. And
Right.
they separated themselves from all the publishing business that has been, and they are going with you, the player. Our players are the most important thing, so we will actually basically listen to you. And to me, it's music to my ears because I've seen it in action with Battlefront 2, with Reddit and the community. When things come together and you listen to each other and you
Mm-hmm.
respect each other, man, the final game is so good because
Right.
everybody wants it to succeed. And
Right.
this is another thing that is happening as well, is that like players are against developers because they think developers are shit and not doing a good job. Developers now are actually hating players because all of a sudden there's
Right.
so much negativity, especially with streaming and stuff, and streamers have a strong opinions, and all of a sudden everybody thinks it's shit. So like it's almost like we're fighting each other, but then there's games in the middle, and we want the games to be good, but the developers are trying to make their best. The gamers are trying to say what they want, and nobody's listening to each other. So
Right.
it's about time that we just go, "Shh," like let's just make this together.
Right.
That's the future, man.
Right.
That's what I think the future is.
Yeah, I mean it makes total sense because a lot of times, for the most part, hopefully, the people making the games are also like want to play the games too. You know what I mean?
That's
So
it.
it should be kind of hopefully like a synergy or working in harmony with, because the players and the developers and ultimately the publishers, obviously, because they worry about the bottom line.
Yep.
Everybody wants this to succeed. So why work in a way where you're just like, man, I'll show them, you know what I mean? Like, why not work in a way where you're like being more receptive to feedback and stuff? So, I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but it's nice to hear, you know?
Completely, yeah. But I think it's a historical thing where most publishers went dark whenever they developed the game because let's keep
Mm,
it secret so we can make a big fuss out of the game whenever we're
right.
ready to publish. And it became a tradition almost, like especially in single players, where it's like we won't say nothing for the first. I mean, let's say like Concord has been developer for like 6 years. Like they only
Mm,
managed to say or like start promoting the game maybe last year, let's say, and that's basically 5 years of development of saying nothing. Right. And I think gamers now know enough of game development that they can go, we want to be part of the journey. So
right.
show us what you have while you have it. We don't care if it's broken. We don't care if it's bad. We'll give you feedback. There's always going to be the players that actually feel like they know everything about everything. Or
Right.
if it's not polished as soon as you hit alpha, then the game is shit. But for those that understand game development, and for those that understand that alphas are broken all the time, betas are kind of like together, but kind of like sellotape together.
Right.
Then you're patient. You're patient,
Right.
and
Right.
when the shit hits, then you know you've been there on that journey with everybody. I mean,
Right.
I was always a massive fan of like seeing developers going like it was hard for these reasons, and then we did these things, and now we're here, and this
Right.
is why this game is great. Watching God of War, like the making of Kratos, or I think he was like, what is it like? It was um, giving birth to Kratos. I don't know the title of that video, but it was a video that Corey Barlog, the director of the game, made.
Got
They
you.
had like a little baby Kratos on his chest, and and the whole documentary is basically documenting the whole. I think it was like 5 years or 6 years that they actually were developing the game.
Wow.
And as much as I like the game, I like it much better now because
Yeah, you know what happened. It's, I don't know. I mean, that, not to bring it back to what we do, but I think that's why having a platform like this, and obviously we're just an indie studio, but this experience, mostly from you, and hopefully more guests that come on where we can be that, I guess like the liaison between the players and also the people making the games, because, you know, not just because it's in the tagline, like, you know, we love making games as much as we love playing them, but that's true. Like,
True.
if it's a symbiotic thing, we love them so much, we want to make more, so you and us, we can all play them. So
100%.
just having platforms where people can be a little bit more, you know, transparent, I think is like super critical, you know, and I love the fact that we're hopefully one of them, and we'll continue to grow.
Fingers crossed, man.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you have the best intentions, but and things don't go your way. But we're trying our best. That's for sure.
Yes,
And
that's for sure.
We definitely want to be in that camp. Because, I really think that's going to be the future, and I think that the publishers that are going to succeed in the future are going to be the ones that basically catch on to that idea and go like, "Look, we can fund you, but it's all about you. Just go ahead and do the thing, right?" As a developer, like they want to hear from you.
Right.
And I actually spoke with a publisher that actually told me exactly that. I won't name the publisher, but they actually said like, look, like we can fund you, but it's going to be you, basically, like us as Proxima, that actually needs to actually front this game, needs to talk with the fans, because they want to hear from you. And I'm like, you know what? This guy is glued in. He knows where the industry is at and where it's going, because I really think that's where it is.
Right. Man, well, I think that's a great way, great place to kind of sign off and check up the peace sign for this episode. You know, as always, I just said it, but yeah, we love playing games as much as we love making them. You know, that's why we do this show for the players. On behalf of Harvey, I'm K-Murdock, and represent Proxima. Find out all about us at go online and search proxima.studio, or just go to that URL. You'll get all the links and everything on the game we're doing, and everything. So till next time, y'all. Peace.